What's up YouTube? In today's video I want to talk about this lens, the Fujifilm 35mm f2.WR. Before you go any further, I want you to be aware that my review is not going to be a super technical review. I want to talk about this lens from my own perspective and how I've found it to be while shooting it as a general sort of do-all lens for travel, for portraits, for street photography and whatever else I want to use it for. Now, right off the bat, one of the main reasons I bought this lens was because of its size. It's absolutely tiny, and this is not a big camera either, so having a really small lens on an already pretty small camera was pretty much what I was looking for. I wanted something with a really small footprint, something that would go in my bag really easy. I could put the strap on it, throw it over my shoulder and hike with it all day, or just carry it around the city, and it wouldn't be a big problem. The only way to go one better than this, I think, is to have like a point and shoot camera or something even smaller than this, like maybe the X100F, something that'll fit in like your jacket pocket or something like that. In the summertime, you're not fitting an X100F in your pocket, so for me the 50mm was a better choice than the 35mm lens. The next thing that made me choose this lens was the fact that it's weather sealed. I have two other Fuji lenses and neither are weather sealed. And actually this is weather resistant, which I think means that it's not as good as weather sealing, so it can get a little bit wet, but you're not going to want to hang around in really heavy rain for a long amount of time. So it takes a little splash, you go out in some light rain, maybe in some heavy rain for a short period of time, but yeah, not too much further than that. Either way, I would rather have some form of weather sealing in there than run about with my lenses that don't have weather sealing. So on a rainy day, I'm taking this lens with me. The next reason was the focal length. The 35mm on the crop sensor makes it equivalent to about 50mm. And the reason I like the 50mm focal length is because it's kind of a do-it-all focal length. It's long enough to get nice portraits of people without too much distortion from a slightly wider lens, and it's wide enough to also back up a little bit and get an overall scene shot or some context within portraits, assuming you have enough space to move around in. And I didn't want to have a whole bunch of different prime lenses that cover different focal lengths, because I'm trying to keep my gear down to a minimum and sort of travel and move around without having to think too much about what's in my bag or what lens I should be using. So if I could pick just one lens to have on my camera and stick with that, I think the 35 was a pretty solid choice. Now it depends on the type of shooter you are. If you're much more of a wide angle shooter, the 23 might be a better choice, or even the 16. Or if you shoot just portraits or just longer focal length, you're probably going to go for the 56 or even the 90. But for general shooting for me, 50mm equivalent focal length works. The next deciding factor for me was the price. This is not my main camera. I have a whole set of Canon cameras that I shoot weddings with, and that's what most of my professional work is done on. I would love to have all Fuji stuff, but I have the Canon stuff and I don't feel like trying to sell it all to go and buy a Fuji kit so that I have a smaller kit. Canon stuff works great, it works amazing for weddings and I'm happy with it, but I do want something smaller for everyday shooting and just running around streets and traveling. So that's why I have an X-T2. So I don't want to spend a lot of money on other lenses and more kit for this smaller kit. So the fact that this lens was like 300 bucks used made it kind of a no-brainer for me. It's a lot cheaper than the 35mm f1.4, which is a stop faster in aperture than this lens, but the vast majority of the time I don't want to shoot less than f2, so I'm more than happy to have this. The 35 1.4 is also larger, so it takes up a bit more space, it's not weather sealed, and as I understand it, it's not as sharp as the f2. So again, I have no reason to want that 35 f1.4. And while I'm talking about sharpness, that is another reason that I wanted this lens. Where a lot of lenses are not as sharp at their widest aperture, I think this lens is super sharp at f2. I don't really notice a drop in sharpness at its widest aperture. Maybe a little bit, but nothing that I can really see, and most people I don't think would ever notice unless they're like really good pixel peepers. It's also a really fast focusing lens. There's not a lot of glass in there to move around, so the motor moves it super quick and super easy, and it'll obtain focus. It won't hunt very much. Maybe if you're in low light it might a little bit, but compared to other lenses it's a super fast focusing lens. Going back to the size of this lens, the small size of it actually I feel makes it less obtrusive when you're shooting street photography. The smaller camera and the smaller lens, people tend to notice it a little bit less. When you have a big camera and you've got like a big 24-70 lens on there and it extends when you zoom it out, I feel like people look at you a bit more. This might be completely subjective to me, and maybe it's my feeling that people look at me more, maybe they just look at you the same amount with a small camera. But there's something about someone with a big camera in public that I think puts people more on edge. And if you have something small that looks like a camera that everybody would have, I feel like they're just like, oh, it's just another tourist with a camera, and like nobody really cares that much. In fact, most tourists have bigger cameras than this anyways, so this probably looks like a toy. And one more thing I think I like about this lens, and I don't know if I'm just imagining it because it's what I've heard about it, but it produces really nice contrast, the colours look great, and it just produces like a really nice image in the camera, and I feel like Fuji makes good quality glass and it shows in the pictures. And that may just be in my head because that's what I've heard about Fuji, and now that's what I'm seeing in pictures. Maybe if I switched to just any old camera I would never know the difference, but there's that. So I think that's about it. This is why I like this lens, and hopefully this is helping you to make a buying decision if you've been thinking about buying this lens. Feel free to drop me a comment if there's anything about it that you don't know that I can maybe answer for you. Also, there's a bunch of people that do the highly technical reviews of this lens as well, so you've probably already checked out a bunch of them, so I don't need to tell you to go and watch other videos about it as well. So I think that's it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Drop me a comment if you have this lens, if you've used it. If you don't like it and don't agree with the things that I've said, let me know. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Cheers!